Hello and welcome back to my channel, the MMA Girl, and I am, of course, the MMA Girl, Jess. I'm already back on my channel this morning. First thing on a Monday morning is not my usual recording time, but I had to get on here to sound off on UFC 320 and all the madness from Saturday night's action. And boy, did we get some action. I was so happy to see the fights come out as they did. I was so wrong with a lot of my picks, the majority of my picks even. But I was happy to be wrong because there were some really, really amazing moments, some great bonuses and some great things that happened, of course, throughout the whole night. So let's get into UFC 320 and sound off on your reaction and my reaction from Saturday night's action. So how can I not start with the main event? Because, of course, if I wanted to go in chronological order, I would have started with the prelims action that struck me the most. But I have to go into the main event because it was very short and sweet. So we don't have much to say apart from, wow, Alex Pereira, he proved everyone wrong. This was one of the picks I got right, so I'm very happy. But of course, I did not predict that he get the job done in less than one round. In 80 seconds, that right overhand that touched just above Ankalaev's ear, that struck him and hurt him bad, made him shoot for that takedown and regret the whole thing. What a game plan from Alex Pereira, of course, looking for that aggressivity, looking for that forward pressure. As soon as the bell rung, I mean, he shot out of a cannon as soon as the bell rung and he was allowed to get his hands on Ankalaev. And I think that's the thing that really made the difference here. He had a game plan that he stuck to the letter, and he knew what he had to do to beat this man. He was right in saying, you know, guys, I will prove to you that I was really sick the last time we fought. He said he was at 40% of his capacity in his body, and he showed that. He was at 40% last time he fought Ankalaev, and he wasn't able to put the pressure on. He had a broken foot. He was unable to do the low kicks that he did arbitrarily when he fights someone, and it was only 80 seconds long, of course, this fight, but you could tell that any of the low kicks that he was getting were hitting, and they were landing on Ankalaev, and that did put Ankalaev off quite a few times. And it was thanks to those low kicks that Alex was able to pressure Ankalaev so much that Ankalaev didn't know where Alex was going to hit next, and that's when he had him in the pocket ready to strike, and he prepared for his jabs to land. Ankalaev just didn't see them coming. And those 12-6 elbows, amazing. Chef's kiss. Nothing to say. Honestly, a really great performance from someone who is so dominant and so powerful that it just makes you question who can beat Alex Pereira for real. When he's 100% and he's on it and he's ready to fight you and he knows what to do to beat you, then there's no way he is being stopped. Now, of course, people are going to say he is beatable because he has been beaten once by Ankalaev, as well as by Israel Adesanya via KO. So we know he's got a chin that has been more and more fragile over the years. But at light heavyweight, I think that 100% Alex Pereira cannot be beaten by anyone on this division. Of course, we saw Prochazka cry reacting to Alex Pereira's win because, of course, all the build up to this fight, we just could tell Alex was different. He was a lot more media heavy. He wanted to react to Ankalaev. The things that Ankalaev was saying on Twitter weren't pleasing him. And he had a lot of things to say. Of course, at the press conference when Ankalaev said there'll be no Shama, no more Shama, Shama's finished, Shama's dead, then that, of course, made Alex Pereira have a lot of things to prove in that octagon. And I think when he goes in there, not letting, of course, the emotion get the best of him, but when he goes in there and gets the job done in that way so quickly, it's because he had something to prove, and he knew he had to prove everyone wrong because, of course, he wasn't the favorite in this fight. Going into the first fight, he was a favorite. Going to the second, he was not at all the favorite here. And he had to prove, of course, also that what Ankalaev was saying on Twitter, what Ankalaev was saying at the press conference was wrong, and he had completely misread the situation. And he had to prove that what he was saying after the first fight was correct, that he was sick, that he wasn't 100%. So a lot of things to prove, and he did all of that. So what is next for Alex Pereira? Well, he has a few options. Of course, he went to the UFC PI on the morning of the fight, and that's what Dana White was saying at the post-fight press conference. He wasn't expecting to see Alex Pereira, of all people, at the PI the morning of the fights. And he said, "What are you doing here?" And Alex was like, I'm coming here to ask if I can move up to heavyweight after this fight because I want to have a super fight at heavyweight." And Dana White said, "Listen, win your fight tonight and we'll see. But of course, Dana White is a little bit hesitant to allow him to move to heavyweight, because Dana White feels like he's still got things to do at light heavyweight, and there are still some great fights to make at light heavyweight with Alex Pereira and the rest of the division. So I agree with Dana White. I think that he has a few things that he has to do. Of course, the division is stacked and he's fought a vast majority of the top 5. However, Carlos Ulberg is still laying in wait for his title fight. And I think that it would only be fair to give Carlos Ulberg a chance to crack Alex Pereira and get that belt. I don't believe he will be successful, but you need to have at least that fight to see whether Carlos Ulberg has his chances against Alex Pereira. Many people, of course, will say that it's just not worth of doing because he'll lose. But I think that's a fight to make at light heavyweight. And I'd like to see Jiri Prochazka versus Ankalaev. Honestly, I'm not joking. I'd love to see Ank in the octagon with Jiri Prochazka. And I'd like to see Khalil Rountree facing, I think Khalil Rountree could also face Ankalaev, but I'd like to see Khalil Rountree face someone in the top 5. I mean, I'm looking at the light heavyweight division right now. Of course, they've not updated the UFC's official site to put Alex Pereira back as champion. But seeing that Carlos Ulberg, of course, is number 3 ranked, he deserves that next title shot. Of course, the Jiri Prochazka versus Khalil Rountree fight was also supposed to be a number 1 contenders fight. But this is what I wanted to say about the UFC and about any other organization that promises number 1 contender fights. There is no such thing as number 1 contender fights, honestly, because what does that mean? Does that mean that Carlos Ulberg and Dominic Reyes, that was supposed to be almost a number 1 contenders fight? It wasn't supposed to be, but after the fight, Dominic was able to negotiate with Hunter Campbell to make it a number 1 contenders fight. So that means that Carlos Ulberg is a number 1 contender. However, the Jiri Prochazka versus Khalil Rountree fight was officially a number 1 contenders fight. So is the next fight to make a Carlos Ulberg versus Alex, or Jiri Prochazka versus Alex 3? Is that the fight to make initially? Both fighters, of course, are fit and ready. I think Carlos Ulberg is potentially a little bit more ready than Jiri Prochazka because he did go through a 3-round war with Khalil Rountree. Let's not forget that. I think the next fight to make is for Carlos Ulberg. And if Jiri Prochazka wants to fight in the meantime, and I'm sure he'll be up for anything, then I see him taking on Ankalaev just to secure his place as number 1 contender for that next fight after Carlos versus Alex will happen. And I think that needs to happen. And I think that's what the UFC should do, because the Jiri Prochazka versus Alex Pereira fight, it's, of course, the 3rd edition of this fight. He's 2-0. So, of course, that obviously creates intrigue. Are we going to see a 3-0 for Alex Pereira? Probably. The fans will obviously want to see Jiri Prochazka get another crack at the title, which is completely understandable as well. So I'd love to see a potential 3rd fight between those two. But in the meantime, we need to freshen it up a bit, because we've already seen a rematch between Ankalaev and Alex. That's the 2nd time at light heavyweight for the championship belt that we've seen the same people in the same match. 2nd fight for Alex after having regained his belt should be versus Carlos Ulberg, because we need to see another fresh face against the champion. Then we could make way for the 3rd edition of Jiri versus Alex for the light heavyweight title if Alex retains the title against Carlos. And I think that would be the best way to do it, because if in another world, in another universe, Alex loses to Carlos Ulberg, then we will be getting Carlos Ulberg versus Jiri Prochazka for the light heavyweight belt, which will renew the fights at light heavyweight, which could be a bit more interesting as well. So that's my suggestion for light heavyweight. Of course, what do you guys think of what Alex should do next? He respectfully, obviously, didn't call out John Jones in the middle of the octagon after his win, because, of course, John Jones recently lost his brother a few days ago, who lost his life at 39 years old. No details yet on how, as of right now. But RIP to John Jones' brother. And of course, all my support and thoughts go to his family and himself. So Alex Pereira did the thing that was respectful, which was not calling out the man after having lost his brother. But that is the fight he wants. He wants John Jones. He wants a super fight at heavyweight. I think we could ask John Jones to move back down to light heavyweight, or find a catch weight between light heavyweight and heavyweight, because that would not be for the belt, because John Jones is not currently the champion. So I think they should do it at light heavyweight, or a catch weight between lightweight, heavyweight and heavyweight, because Alex, for me, and this is what I think Dana White thinks, Alex for me is not heavy enough for heavyweight. As Dana White said yesterday, he's moved up from middleweight originally. He was a natural middleweight to begin with. Maybe not natural, but he was a middleweight to begin with. And then he moved up to light heavyweight. And the move up to heavyweight would just be maybe too much. I think visually you can tell his body is comfortable at light heavyweight, even though he recently came out saying that it has been harder and harder to move to lose the weight to get to 205. So there is a potential argument for him to move up to heavyweight, seeing as the cuts are getting too difficult for him. But does that mean he can get up to heavyweight weight? I don't know. I mean, outside of camps, he's very heavy, but he's not naturally outside of his fight camps as heavy as Tom Aspinall, as heavy as Cyril Gane. He's not at the heavyweight limit yet. So he needs to work on building that muscle up and getting to the heavyweight limit so he can be eligible for a fight. And I don't see that happening in the near future. So I think the first thing he needs to do is go back to light heavyweight, focus on Carlos Ulberg potentially, and then a yo-yo fight. So that's what I have to say on the Alex Pereira fight. Of course, let me know your thoughts down below. Very happy, of course, Alex got his belt back. It's just a feel-good moment for the UFC, for MMA in general. The king of Brazil, the best fighter that's ever come out of Brazil, according to Renato Moicano, has got his belt back, and the world can be at one with itself again. We then, of course, must talk about Merab Dvalishvili, a 5-round war between himself and Cory Sandhagen. It just goes to show, Merab is potentially in the bantamweight discussion for being the GOAT of his division. And as John Wood, his coach, said, he's going to have to do laps around this division. So I'm not really seeing, as John Wood said that, I think that Merab's probably not going to look for a move up to featherweight for now. And he's not going to look for a move down to flyweight either. So I think a lot of people are saying the best fight for him is Pantoja moving up to bantamweight. And I'd love to see Pantoja versus Merab Dvalishvili, seeing as both grapplers are really, really good on the ground. And I want to see what Merab can bring to the table against a Pantoja that he wouldn't need to bring to the table against a striker like Cory Sandhagen, like Sean O'Malley. So this could be an Umar type fight, or this could be a real striking friendly fight, because both guys are too good on the ground to stay on the ground. Props to Cory Sandhagen that despite the 20 plus takedowns that Merab achieved in their fight, he was able to get up so many times. He was able to stay on the feet. He was able to counter a lot of those takedown attempts. So props to Cory. His game plan was solid, and his training and endurance training has worked wonders on him. Props to Merab, of course, also for being a lot more on the feet than he usually is. He could have maybe taken Cory down quite a few more times, but he has accepted, of course, during that fight that Cory was very good at getting back up. So why not try and crack him on the feet? And he did almost crack Cory and almost got the TKO victory via ground and pound in the second. So props to Merab Dvalishvili for his striking game. I think he's really improving his striking every time he's got a camp. And so props to John Wood, props to Aljamain Sterling and all the other coaches that are helping Merab become one of the fiercest fighters we've seen in this bantamweight division in the history of the UFC. And yeah, for me, of course, we need to see Pereira versus Merab Dvalishvili too for the bantamweight belt. And then from there, potentially an Umar Nurmagomedov number 2. And if Merab isn't interested in fighting Umar again, which unfortunately he won't have a choice at some point, maybe, a Pantoja super fight at bantamweight between Pantoja and Merab for the bantamweight belt. That could be really interesting as well to see. So just to brush over the other fights of the main card, of course, I posted on here yesterday talking about Jiri Prochazka versus Khalil Rountree. I, of course, am very happy for Jiri Prochazka that he got that 3rd round KO over Khalil. It was a straight knockout, no need for any ground and pound afterwards. Of course, Khalil, I was so sad to see go down like that. I'm not going to lie to you guys, but when you've got 2 likable fighters in one fight, there obviously is going to be some heartbreak and some joy coming out of it. So for me, this fight was a very mixed bag of emotions, and seeing Khalil Rountree get knocked out like that was very hard for me to see. Seeing where the man's come from, the heart that he puts into his fights and his camps, it was hard to see. Yeah, it was hard to see Khalil go down like that. And I think there was a lot of issues with his cardio, maybe gassing out in the 3rd, 4th rounds, like he did against Alex Pereira. I think that's where his work will need to go to when he goes back to training. He needs to work on that cardio so he doesn't gas out in the third or 4th round. And because he was winning that fight, of course, the 1st and 2nd round, he was winning. The 2nd round, of course, he was letting a few of those jabs get in and land from Jiri Prochazka than he was the first time. He was less counter-punching. He was less quick to react to some of Yuri's jabs and stuff. So I think in the second round, Jiri was picking up on that. And the third round, he capitalized on his fatigue and his lack of counterpunching. And he wasn't, of course, Khalil Rountree punishing Jiri Prochazka as much as he was in the first. And then he paid for it. He paid for the fact that he wasn't as reactive, and he paid for the fact that he was tired. And he paid for the fact that one of his eyes was probably almost closed. You could tell that he was not visibly seeing very well from his left eye. So all of that combined let Jiri Prochazka, the door was open, of course, for him, and let him get the finish. So very sad to see Khalil go out like that. Check out his Instagram. He's, of course, put up a post, a lengthy post, thanking the fans, thanking his coaches, thanking his wife, of course, and also just saying, you know, I will be back. Do not worry about that. In 2026, I'll be back better than ever. And his dreams of being the champion seem not to have been trampled on despite the loss on Saturday night. So I'm very happy to see. The one thing I hate seeing is when fighters then have to say, you know, I think I'm not good for this. I'm not made for this sport, or I'm not going to be in title contention ever again. I really hope that Khalil keep his hope, and he did keep his hope up. And so today he is not going to be the champion in the next few months or next year, but one day he will try again, and maybe that'll be in the next 6 or 7 months or 8 months or year. We'll see, but at least Khalil Rountree is not, you know, given up or anything. So I'm happy about that, and congratulations, of course, to Jiri Prochazka. So we had, of course, Josh Emmett taking on Youssef Zalal. I predicted, of course, a win for Josh Emmett via KO in the second or third round. I did not expect that to end that way, and it was like a silent submission because we did not see it coming. So congratulations to Youssef Zalal for beating undoubtedly one of the best featherweights that we have on the roster right now, in Josh Emmett, of course, an aging fighter who is coming to the end of his career. So, of course, victories like that for Youssef Zalal are needed, but also very much impressive. So he did what Leon Murphy didn't do, which was finish someone like Josh Emmett, and in the first round, no less. So Youssef Zalal has a good argument for potentially a next fight as a number one contender. He, of course, was saying in his post-fight interview that Alexander Volkanovski hasn't currently got a fight booked for his next title defense. So is that him hinting at wanting the next fight against Alexander Volkanovski? I personally think he shouldn't have a fight against Alexander Volkanovski yet, because he did beat, of course, the number 8th ranked featherweight, but he didn't beat the second or third rank. So he needs a number one contenders fight in order to be considered for a fight against Alexander Volkanovski in the near future. I don't think he's rushing it either, because he's young, so he doesn't need to rush it. But I would love to see, for example, Diego Lopez versus Alexander Volkanovski in December, and Leroy Murphy versus Youssef Zalal for a number one contender spot on the same card, as we've done with many cards this year. And that would be cool to see. But I think Youssef Zalal needs one more fight at least to secure his place as number one contender, I think. And of course, for the first fight on the main card, we had Abu Magomedov fighting against Joe Pyfer. Joe Pyfer, of course, was the big favorite in this fight. I then, of course, mistakenly chose Abu. I wouldn't say I regret it, of course. Abu was winning the first round, and Joe Pyfer came back from the trenches and got that win in via submission. And I wasn't expecting that at all, because Abu almost got the win in the first. And for him to come back, for Joe Pyfer to come back like that, was very impressive, but very, very expected, because Joe Pyfer is an extremely powerful and dominant fighter in the cage, and he gets things done quite quickly. So I won't be betting against Joe Pyfer ever again. Never. But Joe Pyfer was very impressive, and I hope to see him back as soon as possible to fight his case for potentially one day getting a title shot in the middleweight division. Some honorable mentions from the prelims card. We had Ramiz Brahimaj, who got the second round submission over Austin Vanderford. What a shame for Austin and Vanderford, of course. Wasn't expecting him to lose that fight at all. Ramiz has been working it hard with Belal Muhammad. He said in his post-fight interview that he's been working so hard with his takedown defense and getting taken down by Belal Muhammad a million times. So his work with Belal and his team has been very successful, and getting that win over Austin Vanderford, it's not a small feat to defeat someone like Austin Vanderford. So good job to Ramiz, and hopefully we'll see him soon. Edmund Shabazian, of course, got the first round KO, as we would have expected. Great fight from him. Of course, Eric Nixick's done a great job with him. So an honorable mention to him for a great performance at UFC 320. Honorable mention to Jacob Wiklas, who, of course, is a Polish fighter who has bbeen training for years and years and years with Joanna Jacek, and Joanna said in one of her post-fight interviews way back in the day that this guy in 10 years will be a UFC star and a champion. And fast forward to now, of course, him coming in, fighting Patchy Mix, which is not a person that people were thinking could be beaten by a newbie like Jacob. And he got it done. Of course, split decision. Patchy Mix, he has to question his future in the UFC, of course, now, because 2 losses in his UFC debut, not looking good. He's not won a single fight in the UFC, and he's just not at UFC level. He's just proved that twice now. He needs to ask himself a lot of questions. But Jacob, congratulations to this Polish guy. He looks great. Daniel Santos got the win via second round KO. He wasn't the favorite and he got it. So very happy for Daniel Santos. And of course, to finish off this video, I'm going to get into Ateba Gautier from the last fight of the prelims card. What an epic fight. Wasn't very long, of course, as we said with Alex's fight against Ankalaev, but Ateba Gautier needs someone to come in at his level. Of course, Tristan Vines was making his UFC debut to fight Ateba Gautier at the last minute because Ozzy Diaz pulled out due to illness. So this was not the fight that was scheduled originally, but Ateba Gautier was still, of course, happy to have a fight on this card, as well as the UFC, of course, because with Ateba Gautier, you know you're going to get some KO action and some 5-star finishes in his fight. So unfortunately for Tristan Vines, he's just been put onto the pile of bodies that Ateba Gautier has left behind him. Of course, Ateba Gautier will be champion one day, as he was saying in his post-fight interview. I'm 23 years old. I've got a lot to learn. I've got a lot to do. He's working with Manchester's top team in Manchester, of course, the UK. They're doing wonders with this guy. He's at 9-1. So I can't wait to see what he's going to be doing in the middleweight division. But he's not rushed to get the top 10 opponent yet because he just wants to fight. He'll take whatever the UFC gives him. But I think the next time we see Ateba Gautier, he will definitely be on a main card. And if it's not against a top 10 opponent, then it's against a top 15 because the UFC will want to test him maybe a little bit quicker than he'd like. But I think he'll be tested in the next time he is in the octagon. And hopefully he'll win again via KO as he usually does. But at least that'll be someone at his level because now we're giving him short notice guys that haven't prepared for the fight nor have the level of Ateba Gautier. So the outcome is inevitable. But I'm hoping to see Ateba Gautier back very soon, hopefully end of the year or start of next year, in the main card of a big fight night or a numbered card because he deserves that spot for sure. What did you guys think of UFC 320? Were you guys happy with the outcome of the fights? What do you think of the situation at light heavyweight? Who should fight who next? And should Alex move up to heavyweight and have a super fight against John Jones? Or should he deal with some unfinished business at light heavyweight before moving up for a super fight? Let me know in the comments down below. And we'll see each other for another episode of my podcast and another video this week for UFC's Rio card, of course, coming in the next couple of days. So stay tuned until then. See you later. Bye.